Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Explore Richland. I'm your host, Mark Ingham. Well, today we are exploring at one of the prime father and son bonding locations in all of Richland. Now, no, I'm not talking about one of our popular city parks, rather the Richland landfill. Now, I have very fond memories of my father bringing me to the landfill as a kid, and those memories don't just stop with me. Now, my dad, or we should call him Grandpa, is bringing my kids here to the landfill, and it's something that they all enjoy so much. Now, the city of Richland owns and operates the Richland Public Landfill, which is a huge benefit to the residents of Richland. Now, to talk about that, we are proud to welcome Jay Marlowe to the program. Jay is the solid waste manager for the city of Richland. Jay, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you.
You bet. So a city-owned landfill is actually not that common. You know, West Richland, Kennewick, Pasco, they don't offer this amenity to their residents. So what is the benefit of a municipally owned and operated landfill?
Well, it probably comes down to control. As you know, the city of Richland is a full-service city, offering everything from A to Z, energy services, water, sewer, storm, and landfill solid waste services as well, both collection and disposal. So I think the city of Richland prides itself in being a full-service city, and it gives us full control. Environmentally speaking, we hired a consultant to analyze those starting back in 2016 and presented our findings in 2017 to both the Utility Advisory Committee and City Council in a workshop format. Our consultant that we had perform the study, when they looked at some of the environmental factors, one of the main things was transportation costs and everything that goes with diesel-powered trucks hauling garbage long distances. And so environmentally speaking, that was one of the benefits that they recognized. The facility, when we expand here in later 2019, 2020, and open our new cell, we'll have the state-of-the-art line facility just like the regional landfills have. And so environmentally speaking, we'll be on par with what they provide for those other cities nearby us.
Wow, that's great, and it sounds like just almost too many benefits to fit into a soundbite. But we also want to walk residents through what a typical visit to the Richland landfill looks like. So can you talk to us about what kind of procedures and processes are in place, and just kind of take us through maybe someone's first time visiting the landfill?
Sure. So maybe I'll just start back. This landfill cell that we're currently operating in, I think we opened in May of 1975. This building and scale that you see behind you was constructed somewhere around 1977, 1978, and it's been in place in operation since then. And so that's probably the landfill experience you had back in the day with your dad. Probably not too much different today. But when you arrive on site, your first interaction with our staff is here at the scale house window. When you arrive, they'll ask you a myriad of questions from where the material's coming from, where you're from, and the types of materials that you're bringing in. Here at the landfill, we exclude certain items at the landfill face, like tires, batteries, electronic goods, those kinds of things. And so City of Richland residents can deliver green waste and sod to the landfill for free currently. And then any solid waste or household waste has a minimum fee of $10, and that's for up to 1,200 pounds. And the scale house attendant will make that determination as you come through the gate, whether you're comfortably under the 1,200 pound mark and get the $10 flat fee, or if they're going to charge you per ton basis.
And of course, we need to remind Richland residents that when they arrive at the scale house, they need to have their current driver's license and their most recent utility bill to prove residentship. So once the residents make it through the scale house, the next spot they will see is household hazardous waste. Jay, kind of talk to us about what items are accepted here.
All right. We have a limited amount of items that we currently accept. The household hazardous waste facility that we did have back in the day unfortunately burned down several years back. And so now we just offer some of the basics, which is used oil collection, used antifreeze collection, small battery collection, propane containers. Those are kind of the basics that are still offered today. We also offer our standard recycling drop boxes similar to what you would see at our 7 drop box locations around the city.
Great, definitely a great benefit to the residents of Richland. And Jay, the next stop on the tour of the landfill is the transfer station. What kind of items can residents dispose of here?
Well, Mark, first as you approach our transfer station facility, you'll see some diversion opportunities. We divert metal and send that to a local vendor for recycling.
Okay.
We also collect green waste in a separate area, as you can see here. We do also divert some dimensional lumber, clean lumber in this area as well. And as we move on towards the transfer station, that is where we collect the remainder of the household garbage, construction debris, landscaping debris that can't be ground and used in our compost operation.
And now, as I'm looking past the green pile here, I'm seeing a lot of, items I would consider as approved items to go in there, grass, leaves and stuff. And I'm also seeing like some pallets of wood. Are pallets of wood items that are acceptable in there, or do you guys have to pick that out afterwards?
No, clean dimensional material is also ground and is used in the compost operation, just like our green waste is. If there's anything painted, stained, treated in any way, it does get disposed of like regular garbage.
Okay, and so from the green waste, then we have rims, I guess tire rims, actual rubber tires that can be disposed of, and then the transfer station where everything else can get put into.
That is correct. Tires are not allowed in the landfill, and so we separate them here as well and haul them to a vendor in Eastern Oregon for final disposal. But yeah, once you put material in the containers here at the transfer station, it's been screened both at the scale house like we previously talked, by the transfer station attendant that will help you here at this building, and at that point we know it's ready to go to the landfill face and be disposed of.
Wow, and now Jay, very orderly, very methodical, very thought out. When did separating and diverting materials here at the landfill become a priority, and what was the goal of that effort?
Yeah, so we really put some emphasis on it back around 2010 to 2012 time frame. I think at that point we could see the end of time coming, for, so to speak, for our existing 46-acre landfill cell. At that point, we knew we wanted to conserve space and conserve the life of that 46 acres that we had available to us at that point. Its current fill date is projected to be early 2020. And so earlier when I talked about some of the consultant work that we had performed to evaluate our disposal options moving forward, it was at that point that we settled on landfill expansion here at our current facility. It helped us get to this 2020 mark, this diversion effort did. Without it, we would have been doing this 2, 3, 4 years ago.
And diverting and separating waste streams didn't stop here at the landfill. It also started out at residential. Back in 2010, the City of Richland launched a green curbside yard waste collection and the blue can, the commingled curbside recycling. How have these efforts helped extend the life of the landfill?
They have definitely helped, like you say. In looking at our annual report numbers from last year, we landfilled about 57,000 tons, and we diverted about 22,000. Most of the diversion was in that green waste tonnage. And then our other big commodity that we've diverted is concrete and asphalt debris. Those have been the big ticket items for diversion.
And I wanted to ask you, I know we've kind of talked about it as we've progressed through this program, but I did want to kind of ask a question about just the state of the landfill, where are we at right now?
Yeah, so I probably tipped that off just a minute ago in one of my responses. But yeah, like I mentioned, the 46-acre cell that began back in 1975 is reaching capacity, projected to be 2020. Somewhere in the early 2000s, landfill staff started to excavate what they expected to be the new cell. And so they made quite an investment in moving that material. And that was part of the factor that played into the consultant's work that I previously talked about in evaluating our options. We already had a cell excavated and pretty much ready to expand. At the same time, we're working with the consultant to determine the best path forward in regards to disposal. We also had a consultant working on a landfill expansion permit for this site. And we knew that having flexibility was going to be best for us. No matter what way the consultant's determination came out, whether it was the transfer station long haul, we would be ready for that. If their decision was to landfill here on site or expand our existing landfill, we would have that permit in hand and be able to do that as well. And so those two things kind of came together, like I mentioned, late 2017 with a final conclusion, recommendation, and then presentation to the Utility Advisory Committee and City Council.
Right. I find the landfill fascinating. I find how cities are able to handle their garbage fascinating, and maybe it's something that most residents maybe don't even think about. They just put the can out there and the garbage truck comes take it away. Could you talk a little bit about the science, or like how we, the science of the pit? Like, in the 70s, I believe there was a different process for how things were handled at the pit to what we're doing now to what's going to happen with the new cell. Can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the science of the pit and how we store or get rid of our waste?
Sure. I would say, this 46 acres that we've been working on since 1975 is essentially an excavated hole in the ground, and not a lot of effort was put into managing the material and extending the landfill or improving compaction of the material going in. And in today's world, we have landfill compactor that's running 8 hours a day, placing the material as densely as possible to eliminate future settlement of the cell, to maximize our airspace. And so handling and processing of material has probably been one of the biggest things. The second piece would be the liner systems associated with the new regulations. Our landfill expansion will obviously include those elements. A multiple liner system and a leachate collection system, and leachate's just a fancy word for water that's come in contact with waste. We'll have a system for collecting that water and treating it. So
Great. Well, good stuff. And Jay, thank you so much for coming on the program and talking with us about the landfill, the state of the landfill, and some exciting times coming for the landfill in Richland as we open up a new cell somewhere around 2020. We want to share that the Richland landfill is currently operating under its summer hours, which run March to October. In that time, the landfill is open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And remember, the landfill is always closed on city-observed holidays. And of course, if you have any questions regarding the Richland landfill, they would love to help you out. Give them a call at the phone number below, 942-7498. Now, if you would like any more information on anything City of Richland related, we strongly encourage you to visit our webpage at the link below, www.ci.richland.wa.us. And don't forget to follow us on all the popular social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We're always sharing tons of important information on our social media platforms. Now, I'm going to see if someone will let me drive that huge tractor. Let's go ask. Jay, what do you think?
no, Mark, I don't think
Not
you're
the big
qualified.
tractor?
How about this?
Okay,
Will this do?
okay, the little Bigfoot John Deere 4x4.
All right.
I'll take what I can get. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can even start this thing. All right. Well, thanks for joining me on this edition of Explore Richland. To the pit. I'm in neutral. Oh, here we go. Yeah, baby.
What do you love most about your city? Good parks, safe streets, clean water? Ever wonder who pays for those services? Well, it's all of us. That's right. We're the taxpayers, and we pay for those services when you live or shop in a city. These same taxes also go to your schools, the county, the state. In fact, your city only gets a small portion of the property and sales tax collected within its limits. City revenues go to the operating budget, where the council funds things like police and fire, parks and recreation, planning, streets and sidewalks. These services aren't cheap. Police and fire alone can take up half the city budget. What about the city utility systems like water and sewer? Who pays for that? Customers. Their money goes to that service, and it can't be used for anything else, like a new park that residents want. And in case you were thinking that the state and federal government pays for some of those services, well, there's not much money there. Their support of cities has dwindled. Overall, city revenues may increase in strong economic times, but they also decrease when things aren't so good. During the downturn, cities work to minimize impacts on the public, but that creates challenges even when the economy recovers, and especially when population grows. Cities are also working to enhance the services residents want, like faster public safety response time, reduced traffic, and better parks. This poses a budget problem today and into the future. Vibrant cities need reliable and stable revenue. We all need to work together to ensure that we can fund the many things we love about our cities.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not a professional speaker, but I'm kind of passionate about what I'm talking about. You know, my dad, what it meant to my dad, and he understood what it meant to you guys. And one thing just came to me right now when Don was talking about that they christened number 4 engine, kind of jumping into the middle of the speech just because, you know, he said that. One of the missions, Dad had almost all the fuel cells in the plane shot out. They were trying to get back to England, and they had one engine running. They ran at full throttle, full manifold pressure, and when they got close to the English Canal, my dad told everybody to get their parachutes on and bail out. They weren't sure they were going to be able to get across the English Canal. February, the canal was 21 degrees. Your life expectancy is 3 to 5 minutes at best. Everybody gets their parachutes on. They walk up, they hand the parachute to my dad. My dad said, "I'm taking it across." He didn't want their plane to go in the drink. He was willing to basically die, try to make sure that plane got home, because he appreciated how much people paid for that plane. Not the government bought that plane, the workers at Hanford Energy Group. So the navigator looks at him and says, "You're going across, we're all going across." And they made it. They landed with 25 gallons of fuel left, and I never knew that it was the number 4 engine that she had christened. The only engine they had running when they got home was number 4 engine. That just came to light when he was talking about her christening the number 4 engine. You know, because Dad said it was so hard to fly. If it had been one of the inboard engines, it would have been a whole lot easier, but it was an outboard engine, and he had to run it full. And I can't imagine, I'm not a pilot, but I can't imagine what it'd be like to have one engine out here trying to pull everything to try to, you know, keep the rudders and keep it straight. Those planes were burning 413 gallons an hour, and they landed with 25 gallons left. Anyway, my dad was actually, when he got out of high school, he went to Wichita, Kansas, went to work at Boeing. You know, and it's kind of fitting to be, you know, wound up being in a Boeing plane later, but he worked at Boeing for 3 years and then was drafted into the Army. And he gets into the Army and they hand him a 1903 Springfield. And real quick, my dad realized that this just wasn't what he really wanted to do. And they were losing so many pilots and gunners and everybody to the war effort in the planes that they started opening up to anybody that could pass an aptitude test could switch over to the Army Air Corps. Because before, to get to be a pilot or a co-pilot, you had to have a college degree. And then they kind of reduced that down to where you had to have some college education. And they said, if you can pass an aptitude test, you can be a pilot. You know, so my dad still had to keep doing his infantry training the whole time. He had the right angle flashlights they had in World War II. He was burning up a set of batteries every week, studying all night. He'd pull his army blanket over, and he would study for this aptitude test. And when he took the test, there was 800 and some people, and I don't know the exact numbers, but 800 and some people took that test, and he finished number 3. Put him in the category to be a pilot, and that's when he started going through pilot school. Got out of the infantry and got into pilot school. His first plane he drew over there was a B-24 Liberator with the nose paint of Shoo Shoo Baby. He flew that 12 full missions. 13th mission, they took off. They just got over the English Canal and the generator quit. They couldn't make the generator run. So they didn't have the heated muffs. They didn't have anything for the gun sights. Wouldn't have power for the radio. So they had to turn around and go back. They got penalized. That mission didn't count. And so the next 13th mission he drew Hanford's plane, day's pay. And of course, you know, everybody, 13th mission the first time came off not so good. What's the second 13th mission going to be like? And they flew that day, and I virtually no flak, no fighters, very easy mission. By the second mission, Dad had said that plane could almost fly itself. He said it was so easy to fly. The B-24 Liberator, he said, was a cumbersome plane, didn't fly as good. He said the B-17G flew almost like the Spearman he was trained in as a single-engine plane. And so he was just overwhelmed with how good the plane did. One of the things is the German fighters would never attack them from the sides. They would attack the 24s from the side because they had so much more firepower. You know, if you come at the side of a B-17G, you could have the top turret with 250s, the bottom turret, waist gunner. You could have 4 or 5 50 calibers aiming at you at any one time. And so they would not come at them from the side. They come at them below and from above. Sometimes they got fighter escorts, sometimes they didn't. The P-51 Mustangs, they really liked it when they got them for fighter escort, because if the Germans seen that they had 51s with them, they wouldn't come up after them. The bad side is the P-51 pilots realized this, so when they got close to the bomb site, they would hang high and right, way behind the bomb group, and wait for them to send the Messerschmitts up after them, and then the 51s would go after the Messerschmitts. You know, Dad says occasionally you kind of felt like he was a piece of steak, you know, put out there for some bait, you know. But, you know, it's just, one of the notes on there is the ball turret on the bottom could be, you could climb into it and out of it from the plane. But if it got damaged and you couldn't roll the ball over to get your door up to go into the plane, if it became damaged and they were going to land, especially if no running gears or anything, they would turn all the bolts. They could actually unbolt that ball turret and drop it off. And then the ball turret gunner is on his own to get out of it and get his parachute deployed. Dad's ball turret gunner went out there one night with a hammer and ball peened all of his bolts where they weren't going to be able to drop him off. You know, I think that's all well and fine, but you know, if you think about doing a belly landing and you're in the ball turret on the bottom, you aren't going to live. You know, but he wasn't going to be dropped out. But talking about, you know, that mission with the on that fourth engine is so astonishing because of the pride Dad had in that plane and understanding that hardworking people paid for that. You know, he talked about that more than just a little bit, you know, the appreciation he had for that. You know, and just amazing. The flak at times, and of course you're probably all familiar with the flak, what it is. Might not, some of the younger people might not be. It's an altitude bomb. The Germans could dial in what altitude they wanted to go off at, and that shell would go up to that altitude and explode. And it was designed in such a fashion that virtually all the shrapnel blew out. Hardly any went up and hardly any went down. It all went out. One mission, his bombardier got up off his chair, walked up to my dad to borrow a Lucky Strike cigarette from him. If you can imagine this, they're flying, they're on oxygen, and he wanted to smoke. Goes up to get a Lucky Strike cigarette, lights it up, goes back to sit down, and there was a hole blowed through his bombardier's chair from a piece of shrapnel. And that pretty much just about had to be the very nose of that shell, because virtually none of that shrapnel went up and down. Almost all of it went out. And so that was kind of amazing. You know, just to think about that. The waist gunners at times would talk about on a real rough mission, the shrapnel was so thick, and every time one of those shells explode, they'd have a great big black cloud. And one of the waist gunners said at one time, he said he swore he could have jumped out of the plane and walked across the smoke because it was so heavy. You know, and that's just hard to imagine. One mission, Dad was talking about flying along, and the plane was actually pulsating as the shrapnel bombs was going off. And they fly in 3 levels, 4 planes in each group. And Dad, you didn't choose where you flew; they give you your assignment. And Dad's assignment that day was the bottom level. And he's flying along, and his plane is pulsating every time a shrapnel bomb would go off below him. And so he motions to the other planes that he could see to go up 10 feet. They raised 10 feet in elevation, and the plane quit pulsating. You know, how close was the bombs? Yeah. You know, that's just unbelievable. Some of the funny things about it, you know, they're going out there and on radio silence. They're not supposed to speak a word because the Germans would pick them up and know they were coming. And they were getting close to the bomb site. About this time, Dad come across the radio, "Who dat?" And it was silence for about 10 or 15 seconds. And then somebody else came on there and said, "Who say, who dat?" And then about 10 or 15 seconds later, and somebody else will say, who say that? Who say? And Dad said that kept carrying on until it was about 10 words long, and all of a sudden the colonel gets on there and snarled, "Damn it, I said radio silence." And it just quiet. They normally started communicating back and forth when they were going back to the base to see who lost, what men were lost, what planes were lost, because they were a tight-knit group. Just the crew was so tight that my dad stayed in communication with him until he died. And after he died, they even paid for my mom a plane ticket to fly back there for another one of the reunions. They were real tight. But the other crew members, the other crews that they were buddied with, they were also tight. And they always radioed back and forth communicating. And that day with radio silence, they landed without saying a word. The radio would say, "You're clear to land, you're clear to land." They would land, nobody said a word. The one thing that was kind of a funny note is when Dad was in pilot's training, he was down in Tampa, Florida, and at that time he was flying a B-24 Liberators. And he the base general walks up to him and said, "Lieutenant Weininger, find you a co-pilot. We're flying to Omaha, Nebraska tonight." My dad looked at him and said, "Yes, sir." And he didn't ask what for. He said, "Yep, I'm going to go up and have supper with my wife." So his best buddy, who was a pilot also, was Bobby Willis from Watson, Arkansas. And so my dad goes to Bobby Willis and says, "Bob, how would you like to fly to Omaha, Nebraska tonight? Be my co-pilot." And it was kind of a degrading to ask a pilot to be a co-pilot. But Bobby thought, "Heck yeah, I get to fly to Omaha, Nebraska tonight. Let's do it." They get in the plane. They fly out. They fly to Omaha, Nebraska. The general has supper with his wife. They wait at the plane. He comes back out. They get in, fire up, take off. And as they're coming into the Tampa base, they're coming in for the approach, and they look up there, and there's about 20 or 30 MP Jeeps. They land, and all these Jeeps are following them in. And the first thing they do is they march into the plane, and they grab my dad, and they marched him off in one Jeep and off one direction, and grabbed Bobby Willis and took him off in another direction, and took the general off in a third direction. And they get Dad in the room in there, and they said, "What were you doing?" He says, "Flying the general to Omaha, Nebraska." "Why?" My dad looked at him and says, "He's the CO. I did what he told me." I do what I'm told. Bobby Willis is in the other interrogation room, and he tells him the exact same thing. Nothing happened to Dad or Bobby. The base general was never seen from again. I don't know. I'm sure they didn't court-martial him, because you wouldn't do that in wartime, but I would imagine he got moved to a different base, and he may not have had all these stars when he was said and done. But it's kind of comical stuff like that. And but he always talked about how much better of a plane that 17 was than the 24. He said the firepower that the B-17G carried, the machine guns it had, everything was just so much more impressive on that plane than the 24. Wasn't me, didn't do it. But he was so appreciative to get that plane, and I wished my dad would be alive to come out and thank the Hanford people for this, because he's talked about that a lot, that it was just so fantastic to be able to fly a piece of machinery that would almost fly itself. One of the missions, one of the other planes in their group was shot up so bad it had nothing left in the midsection. The navigator was dead, the radio operator was dead, both waist gunners, the bombardier. The only people living was the pilot and the front gunner and the tail gunner. And they're coming back in to England, and of course they let everybody else land, because they say this plane can't stay together, because all that was holding it was just the metal framework from the back to the front, and they landed and it did not come apart. So that was one tough plane. It was just extremely tough. You'd hate to be in that position. Some of the things that my dad got out of this deal was he learned he was not a great student in high school. And by his own testimony, he said I was probably kind of a slacker, didn't put forth the total effort and everything. I was just talking to the college up here, and I was telling them this story about Dad's, how he enjoyed education and he learned to get smarter, how he studied to be a pilot. He never quit trying to teach himself something. He learned how to do wiring. He learned how to do plumbing. He could do anything. Overhaul trucks, cars, he could do it all. And I was telling that to the students up there a while ago, and that's why I'm a little bit late here. One of the students came up afterwards, and of course I harped on pretty hard about stay in school. Get a good education. You cannot substitute a good education. One of those students came up to me after the deal up there and shook my hand. He was going to drop out. And he said, because of hearing the story about what our soldiers went through in World War II, and me harping him on a good education, he's going to stay in school. So that made me feel pretty darn good. But he was, one of the things he always talked about was, his exact quote is, "It's a top flying plane and it's surely paid for itself." And he was talking about Hanford's employees paying for that, because he had so much appreciation knowing that this wasn't just the government grabbing tax money. They said these people volunteered to pay for this plane. At Christmas time, they would send over your care packages from your family. My dad got care packages from everybody at Hanford, him and his group, and they got a pallet load of stuff. One of the things I brought out that we did not find until my mom is in the rest home with dementia, very strong, and so we finally had to sell the homestead for money to keep her in the hospital and in the rest home. And we're cleaning it out, and that gray elephant meant a lot to me. It's nothing valuable. It's just a homemade built cabinet that's about 8 feet tall. But I helped Dad paint that gray when I was real little. And I always remember Dad talking about it. So I wanted that gray elephant at home. And my wife and I went and got it here a few months ago. And this is what really shocked me. The mice had got in there. Of course, Mom hadn't lived at the farm for about 4 years. The mice had got into that gray elephant and ate everything up in there. Manuals on Dad's Minneapolis Moline tractor, service manuals on the Ford pickups, and all his paperwork he had in there. Paper filters, the mice had ate everything in there except one canvas bag. They had not touched that canvas bag. 3 letters? 4. 4 letters from Hanford Energy Group people, and 5 or 6 Christmas cards, and a whole bunch of actual film footage from World War II were in that bag. Did God tell the mice, stay the hell out of this? You don't know. And but one of the things I want to emphasize the most to you people, I am so deeply grateful for what my wife has done in trying to find my dad's World War II bomber jacket that my mom had donated to the Richland High School, and it's been stolen out of there. It's never shown up again. She ran an ad on social media begging anybody that might have this jacket, we'd pay for it to have it back. The family had it back. Especially to Donald, because Donald is the one that started communicating back, what do you know about this jacket? And if that conversation wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be donating all the stuff to the national park for everybody to enjoy. There's some pieces we give. I've still got a few more pieces that they will be out here sometime, maybe sooner than later. My dad procured a few things out of the plane, and he was ashamed by it later. But the altimeter, the 8-day wind-up clock, and I don't know where it's disappeared. I cannot find his face mask. He had his oxygen mask. His earphones, he had them, and I brought them out. But the altimeter, we took my mother-in-law to the mountains 2 years ago for her 75th birthday, and I wrapped that altimeter in foam so it wouldn't damage it, and we took that to the Colorado Rockies. And if you had the barometric pressure, an altimeter built in 1942 still kept perfect spot-on altitude all through the mountains. That's pretty good testimony. That plane flew 80 or 90 missions, I'm not sure exactly. Dad flew at 24, but for something that delicate, after that many missions of planes being shook up, being shot up, my dad actually had a piece of the shrapnel that was in one of the fuel cells from the time they had 3 engines out and running on the 4th one. Somebody got into the footlocker and it is no longer there. That would have been a real piece of neat history to have out here, but we don't have that. But all of his life he was so proud of what he accomplished, about working with the plane and stuff. My dad was never one that bragged. He would not, try to gain credit for anything. He was always pretty meek and mild. One time he came to me and he apologized to me for showing off. And I'm in my early 30s, and I said, showing off? He was 65 years old. He'd been battling cancer for 15 years. He'd driven an activity bus for the track team. And a couple of the athletes were dogging him. Hey, old man, don't you wish you could do this? And they started doing some push-ups. And one kid put his feet up on the bottom shelf of the school bus and started doing push-ups. And he kept telling my dad, hey, old man, don't you wish you can do this? And my dad finally said, I'm sorry, son, but I just got tired of them bugging me. And Dad says, well, I think I can. And at 65, battling cancer for 15 years and trying to stay in great health, he got off the bus, did a handstand up against the bus, and did 3 vertical push-ups. The high school kid tried that. Bloodied his nose, skinned the side of his face up, and they left Dad alone. But Dad was ashamed of himself for showing off. That's just what he was. That's how he lived his life. He always harped on us kids to be all you can be and be better than that, and I just wished I'd have paid more attention, but anyway. But right towards the end, when he was about to pass on, the cancer pretty much had him good. He started trying to find that plane, and my sister went with him a time or two down to the Phoenix scrapyard, and he would spend a week at a time going through that scrapyard, through plane by plane by plane, trying to find pieces of Day's pay. And he died not knowing what happened to it. And I didn't know what happened to it till we got the book, the story on Day's pay, written by a guy over here in Montana, and I can't think of his name right now, but in there it shows Day's pay getting scrapped. It meant to him that he told my mom that when he passed on, he'd like, if they could do it, he'd like to have Day's pay put on his headstone. And my wife's got a picture of it in her phone of his headstone, and it is so precise. And this was back down in '87. Now they're putting people's faces and pictures on headstones, but back in '87 they etched into his headstone Day's pay, and it's perfectly atomically correct. And you can even read the Day's pay emblem on it. And the mural down here has Dottie over Day's pay, and none of the photos we can find, I don't know what that was. If you've seen that mural down there, you'll see Dottie on there. I don't know what that is, but that's not on any of the pictures we have of the planes. So you get to talking to some of those vets, and they start telling their stories, and it's just amazing. My hat's off to any vets that are in here. How many vets have we got in here? My hat's off to you, gentlemen. Because, just about no matter what you did, you give up stuff. Thank you. Oh.
I'm a bicyclist. Some people would call me a cyclist. I'm not in it for the sport, but as far as being passionate about something on 2 wheels, that's pretty much me. Being able to work on bikes, that's been a real joy too. And it's neat to see the city's Richland's added bike lanes and bike accessibility in more areas. So it's really neat to see that grow and change. I really enjoy just being able to leave my garage and go for a ride. And what's amazing is right from Columbia Point, you can pretty much, you don't have to drive anywhere. You can get on your bike and you can ride anywhere you want. One of the advantages, I think, of living in Richland and in the Tri-Cities is we have this this amazing gift of connectivity. And by connectivity, I just mean, the ability to take your bike out and ride anywhere you want to. You get to know this community that's pretty amazing. The people who bike, that connection and camaraderie. It's one of those rare places where it doesn't take a lot other than the desire to bike year-round, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. This is a growing area, and I want to invite people to come and experience how amazing the biking is here and just be part of this really positive, amazing growth. It's really amazing the amount of life that we miss because we're on roads, we're on highways, and we go by it too fast. Get out of that car. You've driven however far from Seattle or Portland through some beautiful country, admittedly, but you've been in your car. Get out of your car. Experience what we have here on a bicycle, and, there's nothing like it.
It's ironic that the sun isn't out today. That's because all season long, the sun has been shining bright on the Richland Bombers softball team. Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Explore Richland. I'm Mark Ingham. Spring sports are coming to an end, which means the cream of the crop are getting ready to slug it out in the state tournament. We are at Richland High School, where the #1 softball team in the state has one thing on their mind: bring home the first softball state championship in school history. Well, joining us now is Richland Bomber head softball coach Casey Emery. Casey, thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet. Appreciate you guys being out here.
You bet. Now, Casey, this is the 16th season you've been here at Richland High School.
Yes.
We know the record. We know the state ranking. But this is a team that graduated 10 seniors from last year's team and only returned 4 starters. So how much of this season was maybe a surprise, and what were your expectations coming into the season?
I definitely say it is a surprise. I mean, anytime you can go 22-0, at this point in the season, it probably is a surprise, right? But only having 4 returning four returning starters from last year's team, the expectations probably weren't quite near that high. I mean, we knew we had some good players returning, but we knew we had an uphill climb. So expectations, we weren't real sure yet.
Okay, great. Now, your team has performed at a very high level this year. In fact, you've scored 226 more runs than you've allowed this year. What do you believe the strength of this team is?
Probably our balance. We have good pitching, really good pitching, good catching, hitting, good team speed. But I think that the team chemistry that we've got really helps this team out a lot. They stand behind each other, they help each other, we don't have team issues, and then that helps out, practice and then game situations as well.
That's great. Now, Coach, maybe you can help me out, because I've always felt like Steve Kerr has the easiest job in the world, right? Coach the Golden State Warriors. So maybe you can help me out. What are some of the challenges of coaching a team that is this good?
I don't know really how good we are yet. We beat some teams by a lot of runs this year. I don't know if that means that we're really good or maybe the league's down a little bit this year. We'll find out. I think we've got a pretty good team, but, we'll find out a little bit more as we go through the next 2 weeks.
Perfect. Now, Coach, you've completed MCC play. You're gearing up for the state championship, state tournament. Does anything change for you, philosophy-wise, for just preparing, getting ready for these games?
The only thing that would change is based on our scattering reports of the teams that we're playing. Our preparation might change a little bit, but we kind of just do the same things. Maybe try to incorporate a little bit change because practices get a little bit mundane and stuff. But we just kind of then direct our approach towards our opponent a little bit as far as what we know about them.
Great, perfect. Now, later on in this program, we're going to hear from 2 of the senior leaders on this team, but look through the stats, I noticed that you're getting some monster seasons from some underclassmen. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about junior Addison Pettit. I'm going to look here because she hit .695, 4 home runs, 35 runs scored, 52 RBIs. What has Addison meant to this team?
Those are incredible numbers, right? There's not many that do that, right? First, let me just say, she is the most humble kid you would ever want to be around. Nice kid. but you put her between the white lines on the field, and she's tenacious. She is a competitor. Those numbers, the reason she got those numbers a lot actually is because of the players that we've had here before. The April Utex, the really good players that have been mentors. Stephanie Merwin, they both went Division I. They worked hard off the field to be, outside of practice to become very good. That Addison carries that through.
Hold on. That's pretty good.
Junior Kaylee Northrup. She comes from a great lineage of Bomber athletes. Currently, right now, she's 15-0, struck out 83. That's over 1 an inning. Again, what has Kaylee meant to this team?
She's been our workhorse.
Yeah.
She's pitched almost every inning of every game, and if she had her way, she would pitch every inning of every game. She wants the ball. She wants to go compete. And the thing, too, about her is we're going to have her back next year, along with Addison Pettit, who you mentioned earlier. So we're blessed to have both those kids in our program. Those two have played softball together since like the age 9, and they just continuing now here at Richland. So yeah, we're blessed. We really are.
That's great. Coach, how much fun are you having coaching this group of girls?
You see the smile, right? I mean, even over practicing the other field, ecstatic. This is just a great group of kids. The chemistry is second to none. In my 16 years, we've had some really good teams that had really good chemistry. This one probably is equal to or better than any. So it is easy to come to practice every day.
And Coach, this is a program that has experienced a lot of success recently. In the past 6 years, you guys have placed third in state 3 times and second once. But I want to know, what's it going to take for this team to bring back Richland's first ever state softball championship?
Mark, if I had the answer to that, I have about 6 trophies right now, right? We try to figure that out. We make the state a lot. We haven't brought home the big trophy yet. Like you said, we've been there knocking on the doorstep a few times. It's going to take a little bit of good fortune, but I just think that our preparation and just keep on doing what we do. As you might have mentioned, we are a fairly young team because of all the seniors we lost last year. So I think if we keep our nerves and not get too nervous while we're over there and play our game, we should be fine. I think we're going to be good.
Coach,
okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We look forward to following you in state and wishing you nothing but continued success this season.
Very good.
Well, joining us now is senior shortstop Emily Garza. Emily, thanks so much for joining us today. Emily, now you enjoyed a monster season at the plate this year. I'm going to read your stats. You hit .566, 1 home run, 42 runs scored, 35 RBIs. Amazing. How proud are you with what you were able to accomplish this season?
Well, it's my senior season, so I really wanted to come out and help the team as much as I could, knowing that this was it. This is the last hurrah. So I just knew that if the team could help me behind me with getting on base, I could get them in and just keep getting hits and getting on for my teammates to hit me in also. So
congratulations on your season. I do want to ask you about the team. What were your expectations for the Richland Bombers team this year?
Well, graduating 10 seniors, I knew that there was going to be a lot of holes. I mean, the lineup was kind of messed up already, so I knew that everyone was going to have to pick a role and do it, and so that's what we've been doing ever since the season started. I mean, we're undefeated right now, and so everyone's doing their part in making this team win, so I hope it just keeps going. Joining
us now is senior second baseman Sydney Perryman. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes,
you enjoyed a monster season at the plate. I'm going to read your stats off so I don't mess it up. .436 batting average. You clubbed 2 home runs, scored 44 runs, and stole 24 bases. What goals did you set for yourself going into the season?
Going into the season, I just love base running. So I hit to get on base, and I make sure I can go around the bases as much as possible and score some runs for my team. So that was one of my main goals.
Oh, that's great. Now, what goals did you set for this team headed into the year?
As a team, I just wanted us to go undefeated, which we are so far. And more than just wins and losses, I wanted us to play as a team and support each other and have each other's backs.
Emily, I wanted to ask you, what are the pressures you believe that come with being the #1 ranked team in the state?
Well, when you're #1, everyone expects you to, come out as #1 also, get the state championship. But the pressures from everyone, from school, friends, family, everyone expects you to be #1. And so every game you have to play up to that. So you have to be #1, you have to play the best, no mistakes.
It's super exciting, and you hear everybody talking about it. Everybody at school, everybody in the Tri-Cities knows about it. But you have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to know that you still have to go out there and play your best every game. Like you saw at the Hanford game, it got a little close, and we had to come out and play our best regardless of the ranking.
I'm sure you're in tune with history, but Richland Bombers, although you've had a lot of success, you guys have never won a state softball championship.
Been really close, never won. Yeah.
So, what do you feel like what will it take to bring home Richland's first state softball championship?
I just think everyone needs to play their best. I mean, we've had games where in postseasons we've had slumps and stuff, but I think if everyone just plays together and our chemistry's going and everything's positive, that's the main thing.
We have to play all of our cards right. We all have to be perfectly prepared and get the reps inside and outside of practice and play as a team when we get there.
That's awesome. Now, you're a 4-year starter for the Richland Bombers softball team. Obviously, in your senior year, you know, what are you going to miss most about playing for the Richland Bombers?
There's a lot I'm going to miss. I love the whole town that loves coming to watch, and I love the coaching staff at Richland High, and I'm going to miss my teammates. I played with Emily Garza since 7th grade, so we're going to miss being side by side on the field.
Oh, my teammates. I'll miss playing side by side Sydney. I mean, we've been playing forever since we were little, and she's my best friend, but I'll miss the coaches also. They're not just coaches, they're like having 5 dads. I mean, they're just awesome. They talk to you about anything, schoolwork, family problems, anything. I'll miss the coaches and teammates for sure.
I'd like to thank Coach Emery for hosting us this episode. We had a fantastic time featuring his softball team. The state tournament for 4A softball and baseball begins May 24th and runs through the 25th. The women's softball tournament is held in Spokane at Merkel Stadium, and the boys baseball tournament is held right here in Pasco at Geisa Stadium. Now locally, it was a huge year for our sports team. On the baseball side, the Hanford boys and the Richland boys both made the state tournament. Congratulations to all our student athletes. Now, if you're looking for more information on anything City of Richland related, I strongly encourage you to visit us on our webpage, which is located at the link below. And don't forget, we are where you are. Find the City of Richland on all the popular social media platforms. I'm Mark Ingham. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Explore Richland.
Curious about where your property tax goes? Our property taxes support all kinds of basic public services like schools, ports, hospitals, social services, public safety, and facilities that you use on a daily basis. And yet, when we live in a city, only a small share of the property tax actually goes to the city. It pays for things like police officers, firefighters, streets, sidewalks, parks, and a vibrant Main Street. Each of us use many of these services every day, and others, well, we're happy when they're around in times of need. Businesses and visitors may want quality services. City property tax only increase 1% each year. The problem is that Washington's population is growing much more than 1%. In fact, by 2025, more than 830,000 people are expected to move here, and most will live in cities. And then there's inflation, the price increase of specific items over time. For cities, the cost of inflation, or the cost of providing services, grows faster than 1%. Simply put, property tax does not keep up with rising inflation and population growth. We all want to live in a vibrant city, so let's work together to make sure property tax keeps pace.
A little bit of grease does not go a long way. When washed down the drain, grease sticks to the inside of sewer pipes, not only on your property, but throughout the city's sewer drainage system. Over time, the grease builds up and can result in costly sewer repairs for both the homeowner and the city. Grease buildup in sewer lines continues to be a problem that can only be solved with your help. Please dispose of grease properly. More information and helpful tips are available on the City of Richland's webpage.
What do you love most about your city? Good parks, safe streets, clean water? Ever wonder who pays for those services? Well, it's all of us. That's right. We're the taxpayers, and we pay for those services when you live or shop in a city. These same taxes also go to your schools, the county, the state. In fact, your city only gets a small portion of the property and sales tax collected within